The night sky has always been a place of wonder, a quiet ocean of stars stretching far beyond what our eyes can see. For centuries, humanity looked upward with curiosity, building ships that could take us into orbit, then to the moon, and later into deeper reaches of space. But no matter how far we went, we carried with us the same question. What if something out there was watching us too? That question, once only whispered in science fiction and late-night conversations, became very real the day the alien ships arrived. They didn't come with warning. No greetings, no messages, no attempts to explain who they were. One day the skies were ours, and the next, they were filled with shadows. Cities fell silent under their hovering fleets. Fields where families once lived turned into dust. The invaders didn't want to talk. They wanted control. Humanity's defenses, nuclear weapons, satellites, the best fighter jets we had, meant nothing to them. Our most advanced technology was like a child's toy compared to theirs. For the first time in history, every nation on Earth faced the same truth. Survival was no longer guaranteed. And yet, even in the face of defeat, humans have a strange habit of refusing to surrender. Somewhere in the chaos of collapsing governments and burning skylines, a secret was born. Whispers spread about a ship, an old black vessel hidden far from the aliens' watchful eyes. Unlike anything the public had ever seen, this ship wasn't designed for exploration or peace. It was built in silence, decades before the invasion, during a time when nations feared each other more than the stars. It was a weapon, one so dangerous that it was hidden away, locked under layers of secrecy. No one expected it to ever be used. Until now. The story begins with a small group of survivors who stumble across this secret while searching for shelter. They aren't soldiers, not trained operatives, not the kind of people who plan to stand against alien conquerors. They are ordinary humans, engineers, students, workers, people who lost everything but still held on to the hope that tomorrow might come. When they first hear the rumors of the black ship, they dismiss it as another story, the kind that desperate minds invent to give themselves comfort. But then they see it for themselves, buried in a cavern of steel, humming with a power that doesn't feel like it belongs to Earth. The ship is massive, dark as midnight, its surface absorbing every light that touches it. Unlike the alien vessels that glow with sharp lines of blue and silver, the black ship looks alive, almost breathing, like it was grown instead of built. The group can't explain it, but they feel something when they stand near it. A pressure in their chest, a whisper in their minds, as though the ship itself is waiting for them. Some believe it's cursed, a machine that should never have been awakened. Others believe it's the last chance humanity has to turn the tide. Still, the question remains, what exactly is this ship? No records explain who built it or how it came to be. The technology inside doesn't match any human design, yet it's been hidden on Earth long enough for dust and rust to settle across its launch bay. Was it really built by human hands? Or was it something we found long ago and kept secret from the world? The mystery only deepens when they attempt to enter. Doors open without code or key, responding instead to their presence as if it recognizes them. Inside, the black ship feels both alien and familiar. Controls shaped like human hands, corridors sized for human steps, yet the walls hum with energy no human could have engineered. It is a paradox, ours but not ours. When one of them sits in the pilot's seat, the ship reacts. Lights flicker, engines rumble, and for the first time since the invasion began, humanity has something the conquerors did not expect, a weapon hidden in darkness. But with power comes fear. The group knows the aliens will sense this awakening. They've seen what happens when humans resist, the swift retaliation, the burning skies. The black ship is not just a vessel. It is a beacon, a declaration that Earth is not finished yet. Every second they spend inside, they risk drawing the enemy closer, and yet, none of them can walk away. The ship is more than steel and circuitry. It feels alive, as though it has been waiting for this exact moment, waiting for them. There are whispers that the black ship doesn't just fight the aliens, it hunts them. Built with systems that adapt, evolve, and learn, it can turn their own strengths against them. Where human weapons once failed, this ship shifts the balance, making the conquerors the prey. But if that's true, why was it locked away? Why did those who knew about it choose to bury it instead of unleashing it? Did they fear the aliens, or did they fear what the ship might do to humanity itself? As the engines grow louder and the ground shakes beneath their feet, the survivors must make a choice. They can remain hidden, clinging to the scraps of a broken world, or they can climb aboard the black ship and risk everything. Their hands tremble as they reach for the controls. Outside, the skies rumble with distant thunder, not from storms, but from alien ships circling, searching, hunting. The moment they activate the ship, there will be no turning back. The black ship is awake now, and something tells them it has been dreaming of war. But the truth remains hidden in shadow. Was this vessel humanity's final weapon, or was it never ours to begin with? As the survivors prepare for their first flight, one thought echoes in their minds. If the ship can hunt the aliens, what else might it hunger for? The engines roar, the walls tremble, and the lights flare brighter than ever before. Outside, the alien fleets begin to shift, as though sensing the challenge rising from beneath the earth. The black ship's hull glimmers with a strange, dark glow. For the first time since the invasion began, the invaders are no longer the hunters. The group doesn't know if this ship will save humanity or doom it. But as the ground splits open and the black ship rises into the night sky, one thing is certain. The silence of submission is over. The battle has only just begun, and somewhere, deep within the darkness of the ship, something stirs, as though it has been waiting not just for enemies, but for prey. The ground still shook long after the black ship rose into the sky, leaving behind the ruined cavern where it had slept for decades. Dust and smoke trailed down into the valley, but all eyes stayed fixed upward. The survivors inside the ship clung to their seats as the vessel climbed higher, engines pulsing with a rhythm that felt more like a heartbeat than machinery. It wasn't like the rough shake of human rockets nor the quiet hum of alien crafts. This was different, alive, as if the ship itself had chosen to wake and carry them. No one spoke at first. The silence was heavy, a silence made not of calm but of fear. Each of them knew what this meant. Rising into the sky was a declaration, a signal bright enough to be seen across continents. The aliens, with their endless patrols and relentless scans, would not ignore this. They would come. The question wasn't if. It was when, among the survivors, doubt grew. Some stared at the dark walls of the ship, their reflections barely visible in the glossy surface. One asked quietly, almost in a whisper, "What if this isn't ours? What if we're just sitting inside their trap?" No one answered. Deep down, each of them carried the same fear. The one who had first sat in the pilot's chair still hadn't moved. Their hands rested on the controls, but it felt less like steering and more like being guided. When they thought of climbing higher, the ship rose. When they thought of slowing, the ship eased its speed. It wasn't just responding, it was listening. That realization sent a chill through them. Machines weren't supposed to listen. As the ship leveled out above the clouds, the survivors finally saw the world as it had become. Below, entire cities lay in ruins. Fires burned without anyone left to put them out. Roads were broken, bridges collapsed, rivers running black from ash. In the distance, alien ships floated like predators over the wreckage, their sleek forms glimmering faintly against the night. Humanity's world, once so loud and alive, now looked like the aftermath of a storm. And yet, above all that destruction, the black ship cut through the darkness with quiet power. But power without understanding was dangerous. They needed answers. How long had the ship been here? Who had hidden it? And most of all, why did it feel less like a weapon and more like a living being? They searched its corridors. The interior seemed endless, halls that bent and curved like veins. Some doors opened when they approached, others stayed sealed as though refusing entry. Inside the open rooms, they found more than controls. They found echoes of humanity's past. Old symbols from forgotten space programs. Fragments of writing etched into panels, though much of it was worn away or hidden under layers of strange material. There were even objects that looked like chairs, but shaped oddly, as if built for someone not quite human. The longer they explored, the more questions grew. The ship wasn't purely alien, yet it wasn't purely human either. It was something between, a fusion of knowledge from both sides. That realization unsettled them more than the invasion itself. It suggested one possibility they dared not speak aloud. Humanity had known about this enemy long before the invasion began. In one chamber, they found what looked like a viewing screen. When touched, it flickered to life, displaying images not of Earth, but of distant worlds. Some lush with forests, others barren deserts, others hollowed out and empty as if stripped bare. Among the images were flashes of battles, ships like the Black Ship tearing through fleets of glowing alien craft. The footage was old, grainy, but real. It was proof that the war they faced was not new. It had been fought before, in places far beyond their skies, and someone had brought a weapon from that war to Earth, hiding it until the day it would be needed. But if it was meant to save them, why had no one told the world? Why bury such a weapon instead of preparing humanity for its use? The survivors debated, voices rising in the hollow corridors. One believed it was hidden out of fear, that the ship was too dangerous, too unpredictable to be trusted. Another argued it was locked away because humanity wasn't ready to wield it, not until the moment of desperation came. Yet none of them could deny what they now saw. The Black Ship was not just a relic. It was a predator, designed to hunt those who now hunted Earth. Still, the ship's motives remained unclear. As they explored deeper, they noticed strange patterns in its behavior. Lights would brighten near certain individuals, dim near others. Paths would open as if guiding them toward something unseen. Once, when one of them grew angry and shouted at another, the ship's walls vibrated with a low, warning hum. It was as though the vessel could feel their emotions. Could it also judge them? The unease grew heavier. One survivor whispered late in the dark, "What if it chooses who lives and who doesn't?" None of them wanted to believe it, but the thought lingered, unshakable. While they argued over the mystery, the enemy stirred. Far above Earth, alien fleets began shifting their formations. Patrols tightened, their movements sharper, more focused. The Black Ship's awakening had not gone unnoticed. The survivors could see them on the viewing screen, dozens, then hundreds of silver ships gathering in the sky, like vultures circling over prey. It would not be long before they came hunting. The group faced another decision. Do they test the Black Ship now, risk drawing the full wrath of the enemy? Or do they stay hidden, learning its secrets before stepping into the storm? Time was slipping away, and every delay meant another human settlement burned, another group of survivors silenced. But to rush ahead blindly could mean doom for everyone left. Tension fractured their unity. Some pushed for action, arguing that fear had already cost humanity too much. Others urged patience, afraid that the Black Ship's power might not just destroy the aliens, but them as well. The arguments grew sharper, louder, until the ship itself seemed to react. Lights flickering, engines humming with restless energy. It was almost as if it were waiting for their decision, or worse, deciding for them. And then came the first sign that the aliens had found them. On the viewing screen, a cluster of enemy ships broke formation, moving toward their location. Sleek, glowing, silent hunters closing in fast. The survivors felt their throats tighten, hearts racing. This was no longer theory or debate. The Black Ship was no longer hidden. The enemy was coming. The pilots' hands tightened on the controls. They didn't know how to fight, didn't even know if they could, but the ship responded to their fear with a deep rumble, as though promising it could. Somewhere in its dark hull, weapons awakened, systems humming with power too great for human understanding, and in that moment, as the alien ships descended, the survivors realized something chilling. The Black Ship wasn't waiting for their permission. It wasn't theirs to command. It was choosing this battle on its own. The screens flashed, alarms pulsed, and the engines roared louder than ever before. Outside, the night sky lit with approaching shadows. Humanity's final weapon had been unleashed. But was it fighting for them, or simply using them as the bait to draw out its true prey? The answer remained hidden, locked in the darkness of the Black Ship's heart. And as the first enemy craft closed in, the survivors understood a truth more terrifying than the invasion itself. They were no longer passengers of this story. They were part of the hunt. The Black Ship cut silently through the clouds, a dark shape against the pale moonlight, while the alien crafts closed in. Their sleek silver hulls glimmered with cold light, their movements precise, almost predatory. Inside the ship, the survivors felt the tension pressing down on them like a storm. Every second that passed stretched thin, each breath heavy with the knowledge that the first battle was seconds away. But then something unexpected happened. The black ship didn't fire. No weapons lit up, no missiles launched. Instead, it slowed, its engines thrumming low, as if waiting for the aliens to make the first move. The survivors exchanged uneasy glances. It was as though the ship wasn't just a machine of war, it was studying them, and testing itself. The alien crafts drew closer. On the viewing screen, their sharp outlines filled the sky, fanning out in a tight formation. A voice broke the silence inside the black ship. One of the survivors whispered, "We should strike first. Show them we're not afraid." Another snapped back, "What if this thing can't even fight? What if we fire and it fails us?" The argument hung in the air, unanswered, until the aliens unleashed their first strike. A beam of searing light shot toward the black ship. The survivors braced for impact, expecting fire and death, but the ship reacted faster than thought. The beam bent, curving away as though the air itself had been folded. The energy scattered harmlessly into the clouds. The survivors gasped in disbelief. The ship had defended itself, twisting reality around them. The aliens fired again, and again the attack slid aside as if the black ship was untouchable. And then, without warning, it struck back. Not with fire or light, but with silence. A pulse rippled outward, invisible yet crushing. The alien crafts shuddered mid-flight, their glowing hulls dimming, their movements stuttering. One by one they spun out of control and fell from the sky, their silver bodies vanishing into the black ocean below. No explosions, no debris, just sudden silence. Inside the ship, no one cheered. The victory felt hollow, heavy, like a secret too dangerous to celebrate. They realized the black ship hadn't just fought, it had consumed. The survivors felt it in their bones, a strange emptiness that followed the battle, as though the ship had taken something from its enemies, something unseen but vital. One of them muttered, "This isn't defense, it's feeding." That thought settled over them like a shadow. The black ship was powerful, but power came with questions. If it fed on the enemy, what else might it hunger for? Would it stop with alien prey, or would it eventually turn toward the very humans who sat inside its walls? Even as fear gnawed at them, another conflict took root among the group. They were not a united crew, not trained soldiers. They were survivors, each with their own past, their own grief, their own vision of what survival meant. Some wanted to use the black ship to fight openly, to strike back and reclaim Earth city by city. Others feared that such aggression would only draw the full force of the alien armadas, ensuring humanity's destruction. The tension between them grew sharper each hour. One survivor, a former engineer, began insisting that the ship needed to be studied before it was used again. "If we don't understand it," they said, "we'll just repeat the same mistakes that brought us here." But another, who had lost family during the first wave of attacks, demanded action. "Every second we sit here, more people die. This ship is our only chance, and we're wasting it." Their argument spilled into shouts, the echoes bouncing along the ship's walls until the vessel itself seemed to hum louder, as if feeding on their conflict. The survivors weren't the only ones facing decisions. On the ground below, scattered groups of humans looked to the skies, watching the black ship's shadow move. Rumors spread quickly. Some whispered it was a miracle, a sign that humanity had a weapon even stronger than the invaders. Others feared it was another alien trick, a lure designed to flush survivors into the open. Across the ruined world, hope and doubt collided, fueling unrest. Even far from the black ship, humanity's fight for survival was tearing itself apart. Meanwhile, the aliens were not idle. Their fallen crafts had not gone unnoticed. From the far edges of the atmosphere, larger ships began to stir, vast leviathans of silver and blue that dwarfed the scouts destroyed earlier. These were not hunters sent to patrol. These were executioners. They had not faced resistance in years, and now something had risen that they did not understand. They moved with purpose, tightening their grip over Earth, preparing to eliminate the threat before it spread. The black ship's survivors could sense it. The viewing screen flickered with images of massive fleets repositioning, their numbers too great to count. They knew the next encounter would not be as easy as before. The aliens were adapting just as the ship seemed to adapt. And caught between them were the survivors, fragile humans riding inside a weapon that seemed to be writing its own rules. As the conflict with the aliens deepened, another subplot began to unravel inside the ship. One of the survivors noticed that certain symbols etched into the walls glowed faintly when they touched them. At first, it seemed like a trick of the light, but then patterns began to emerge. Maps, fragments of text, diagrams of systems that no human had ever seen. The ship wasn't just a weapon. It was also a library, storing knowledge from battles fought long before humanity's first steps into space. This discovery divided the group even further. Some believed that unlocking this knowledge was the true path forward, that the ship had been left as a guide, not just a gun. Others saw it as distraction, a dangerous temptation that wasted precious time while humanity bled. The arguments returned again and again, louder each time until even sleep offered no escape. The survivors also began to feel changes within themselves. The longer they stayed aboard, the more connected they felt, not just to each other, but to the ship itself. Thoughts flickered faster, decisions came easier, and sometimes they would move as one, reacting to danger before a word was spoken. At first it felt like unity, a gift, but soon questions rose. Was the black ship helping them, or was it reshaping them? While they wrestled with these questions, the alien fleets drew nearer. On the horizon, great shadows moved like storms, swallowing the stars. The black ship pulsed with energy, restless, as though sensing the approach of a true hunt. The survivors braced for what was coming, but none of them could escape the larger truth pressing in on them. The war was no longer just between humans and aliens. It was also between humanity and the very weapon they now rode. Each choice they made, whether to fight, to hide, to unlock the ship's secrets, brought them closer to answers none of them were sure they wanted. And as the alien fleet circled, and the black ship's heartbeat echoed louder in their chests, one truth became clear. Humanity's survival depended not only on resisting the conquerors above, but on surviving the darkness they had unleashed below. The battle lines were no longer simple. The aliens hunted. The black ship hungered, and caught in the middle, humanity had to decide whether it would rise as predator or fall as prey. The black ship drifted through the high atmosphere, dark against the endless sky, its engines pulsing with a steady rhythm that seemed to match the survivors' racing hearts. Below, the world was a graveyard, cities reduced to ruins, fields scarred by fire, oceans glowing faintly where alien machines harvested resources without rest. Above, the alien fleets gathered, vast and uncountable, forming a ring of silver that tightened with every passing hour. The survivors could feel it in their bones. The war was rushing toward a breaking point. Inside, tension grew unbearable. The group no longer spoke in calm voices. Every discussion turned sharp, words cutting like blades. Some demanded they take the ship into battle immediately, strike the fleets before the enemy could strike first. Others argued the ship was too mysterious, too dangerous, and that using it blindly would doom what remained of humanity. The ship itself seemed to listen, its walls humming softly when anger rose, its lights flickering when fear spread. It was impossible to ignore the sense that it wasn't just reacting. It was learning from them. One survivor stayed close to the symbols etched into the walls, tracing them with careful fingers. Each touch revealed fragments of information, images of alien ships breaking apart under pulses of dark energy, diagrams of weapons that bent light and matter, glimpses of planets reduced to silence. They began to suspect that the black ship was not simply Earth's hidden weapon, it was a survivor of wars long before this one. Its knowledge was ancient, its purpose unfinished. But who had left it behind, and why Earth had been chosen as its hiding place, remained unanswered. The discovery only deepened the divide. Some insisted the knowledge was a gift, proof that humanity had been chosen to wield this weapon. Others warned it was a curse, a burden far greater than any people should carry. The arguments grew so fierce that at one point two nearly came to blows. The black ship responded instantly, its walls vibrating, lights flaring red, the air itself charged with a pressure that forced them apart. It was no longer possible to deny it. The ship wasn't just listening. It was judging. Beyond the hull, the alien fleets shifted again. On the viewing screen, massive warships began to break formation, gliding forward in slow, deliberate movements. Their size dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Each one looked like a floating fortress, armed with weapons capable of slicing cities apart in seconds. They weren't scouts or patrols, they were executioners, sent to crush resistance once and for all. The survivors stared in silence. The scale of what approached was almost too much to grasp. Against such a force, even the black ship's strange power felt small. But the ship did not seem afraid. Its engines grew louder, its glow deepened, as though it had been waiting for this very moment. One of the survivors leaned close to the viewing screen, their voice shaking. "It wants to fight them." "All of them!" The words sank heavy into the room. None dared answer. Then came the signals. Strange sounds echoed through the ship, a mix of static and tones that pierced the ears. At first they thought it was interference, but then the patterns became clear. It was language. Alien voices speaking in frequencies humanity was never meant to understand. The survivors clutched their heads as the sounds pressed into their skulls, filling them with dread. The aliens weren't just preparing to strike. They were communicating, warning, threatening, or perhaps recognizing the black ship for what it was. The pressure built. Night after night, the survivors could not sleep, haunted by the ship's pulse and the enemy's looming shadow. Some began to see things. Flashes of memory that weren't their own, visions of battles fought in skies they had never visited. One dreamt of standing on a desert world beneath two suns, watching fleets burn. Another dreamt of oceans boiling away under the same dark pulse that had struck the scouts. These visions felt too real to dismiss. The ship was sharing its past with them, bleeding its history into their minds. But why? To prepare them or to bend them into something new? Trust shattered further. Suspicion spread among them. One survivor accused another of being too close to the ship, of listening to its whispers more than to the group. Another insisted the ship was choosing a leader, and that the rest of them were expendable. The arguments became desperate, fueled by fear and exhaustion. More than once, the thought of abandoning the ship altogether was raised, but always it ended the same way. Without the black ship, there was nothing, and still the enemy came closer. The ring of alien fleets was no longer distant. Their lights glittered in the atmosphere like a second sky, hemming the black ship in from every direction. The viewing screens filled with their presence, so many that the survivors lost count. The planet itself seemed to shudder under the weight of their arrival. The black ship began to change. Its dark hull rippled, patterns of light crawling across its surface like veins of fire. The survivors felt it deep inside their chests, the pressure of something vast awakening. The air inside the ship grew heavy, difficult to breathe, as though the vessel was drawing in everything around it, energy, memory, even will. The survivors gripped the walls, fighting the feeling that they were being pulled into the ship itself. Then came the sound, a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through every bone. It wasn't just noise, it was a call. The survivors realized with horror that the black ship wasn't hiding its presence anymore. It was declaring itself, summoning the enemy, daring them to come. And the aliens answered. On the viewing screens, the fleets shifted again, this time surging forward in unison. Dozens of massive warships advanced, smaller crafts darting ahead like predators released from a leash. Their weapons lit the darkness, beams of light slicing through the sky, aiming for the single shadow at the center of it all. The survivors clung to their seats, panic rising. The ship was moving now, fast and steady, straight toward the heart of the enemy formation. It was no longer waiting for their decision. It had chosen its path. They were passengers on a vessel that had claimed its own war. Fear mixed with awe as they watched the black ship maneuver. It moved like nothing they had ever seen, folding space around itself, slipping through attacks that should have destroyed it. But the enemy kept coming, relentless, filling every gap with fire. The viewing screens flashed white again and again, the sound of impacts vibrating through the hull, though none broke through, for now. And in that chaos, a deeper fear grew among the survivors. Not of the aliens outside, but of the ship itself. Its power was overwhelming, almost divine. They could feel it digging into their minds, urging them to let go, to surrender themselves fully. Some resisted, clutching their humanity like a shield. Others felt tempted, seduced by the promise of strength, of becoming more than human, of becoming part of something greater. The conflict inside the ship mirrored the war outside. Trust frayed to the breaking point. One survivor shouted that the ship wasn't fighting for humanity at all, that it had its own mission, one that had nothing to do with saving Earth. Another argued that it didn't matter. That survival was survival, and the aliens had to be stopped at any cost. Their voices clashed with the roar of the ship's engines, until it became impossible to tell where human will ended and the ship's will began. The alien fleets closed in tighter, their massive warships looming, weapons charged to blinding brightness. The black ship pulsed in answer, its dark glow spreading across the hull, preparing something none of the survivors had ever seen. The air inside the vessel grew hot, electric, as if reality itself was straining to hold back what was coming. The survivors exchanged one last look, eyes wide with fear, awe, and the weight of choices they no longer controlled. Outside, the fleet circled, the skies lit with fire. Inside, the black ship throbbed with power, alive, waiting for the moment to strike. Everything, the mystery, the fear, the whispers, the endless conflict, had led to this. The world held its breath, balanced on the edge of destruction. And as the alien armada bore down and the black ship's energy reached its breaking point, the survivors understood they were standing at the threshold of something greater than war itself. The climax was no longer far away. It was seconds from shattering the sky. The black ship vibrated like a living heartbeat, its dark hull glowing with strange patterns that rippled outward as though it were drawing breath before a scream. Outside, the alien armada closed in, their vast ships glimmering with cold light, their weapons charged, ready to erase the last flicker of human resistance. The survivors could feel the air thickening inside the ship, charged with energy that pressed against their skin and rattled their bones. They braced for the inevitable strike, for the moment when the black ship would unleash its hidden power and tear the sky apart. But then it stopped. The glow along the ship's surface dimmed. The hum of its engines softened, and the pressure that had filled the air vanished as quickly as it had come. The survivors stared at each other in stunned silence. The black ship had been seconds away from releasing its fury, and yet it had chosen not to. The enemy still closed in, but the ship remained steady, watching, waiting. One of the survivors whispered, "Why isn't it fighting? What's it waiting for?" The answer came in a way none of them expected. The viewing screens flickered, and for the first time, a new image appeared. Not of the alien fleet, not of distant stars, but of Earth itself. Cities in ruin, oceans burning with light, people scattered and struggling in the shadows of alien machines. The images moved like memories, focusing not on the war above, but on the survivors below. Men and women hiding in tunnels, children searching for scraps of food, small groups resisting with whatever weapons they could find. The survivors inside the ship realized with dread what the black ship was showing them. The world wasn't just fighting for survival, it was collapsing. Then the screen shifted again. This time the images were not from Earth, they were alien. Structures vast and spiraling, skies filled with silver ships, fields of strange technology harvesting energy from suns and stars. The survivors saw worlds burning not by alien hands, but by the same dark energy pulse the black ship had used earlier. They watched entire fleets crumble, their glowing hulls dimming before vanishing into silence. It was as though the ship was revealing its history, its true nature, and the truth chilled them more than the alien armada outside. The black ship had been here before. It had fought these enemies across countless worlds. It had hunted them, consumed them, and left only silence behind. And now, Earth was simply the next battlefield in a war that had begun long before humanity ever looked at the stars. The revelation tore through the survivors. Some refused to believe it, insisting the images were lies, tricks meant to confuse them. Others accepted the truth with hollow eyes, realizing that humanity had not been chosen to wield the black ship. Humanity had been caught in the middle of a conflict far older and larger than itself. The ship wasn't fighting for Earth. It was fighting for itself, continuing a war that had no end. But the deeper twist came when the viewing screen revealed something even more unexpected. In the shadows of the alien fleets, there were signals, patterns hidden in their formations, faint transmissions between ships. The survivors leaned closer, trying to make sense of it until one of them realized what they were seeing. The aliens weren't just responding to the black ship. They were afraid of it. The massive fleets, the overwhelming firepower, the endless patrols. It wasn't just an attempt to conquer humanity. It was containment. The aliens weren't trying to destroy Earth. They were trying to make sure the black ship never woke up. The survivors felt their stomachs drop. Everything they thought they understood flipped upside down. Humanity wasn't the primary target. It was collateral damage. The invaders had come not to enslave Earth, but to bury the weapon that lay hidden beneath it. And now, because the survivors had awakened it, they had put the entire planet in greater danger than ever before. The group broke into chaos. Some shouted that they had to shut the ship down, find a way to bury it again before it consumed them all. Others argued it was too late. The aliens were here, and the only chance of survival was to fight. The shouting echoed in the corridors, words laced with fear and anger, until the black ship's hum grew louder, silencing them with a single, low vibration that rattled their teeth. It was then that one of them noticed something terrifying. The symbols etched into the walls no longer glowed faintly. They burned, alive with light, as though reacting not to touch, but to the arguments themselves. The survivors backed away, realizing that the ship wasn't just listening anymore. It was feeding. Every choice, every conflict, every burst of fear made it stronger, and then came the second twist. The viewing screens showed not just alien fleets, but smaller hidden signals rising from Earth itself. In the ruins of cities, in mountains and seas, dormant structures began to stir. Strange machines hidden deep beneath the ground or buried under oceans flickered with light. They were not alien ships. They were fragments of the same technology as the black ship. Humanity hadn't been living above just one secret. They had been living above many. The survivors reeled. Earth was not simply invaded. It had been seeded, prepared long ago as a vault, a prison for weapons like the black ship. And now, with one awakened, the others were stirring. If the black ship was dangerous, what would happen if all of them rose together? The tension thickened into suffocating weight. The survivors no longer argued about fighting or hiding. Their conflict turned to something deeper, whether they had unleashed humanity's salvation or its destruction. Each passing second pushed them closer to an answer they didn't want to face. Meanwhile, the alien fleets drew tighter. The massive warships stopped advancing, holding position as though waiting. The survivors understood why. The aliens weren't rushing to destroy the black ship because they feared what would happen if they struck too hard. They were trying to contain it without triggering something worse. But the black ship had no intention of being contained. Its hum deepened, its glow spread, and the survivors felt their minds pulled further into its rhythm. Visions flashed before them again. Worlds broken, fleets devoured, civilizations erased. The black ship was not humanity's final weapon. It was a predator that had outlived countless wars, and Earth was just its newest hunting ground. The survivors clutched their seats as the ship began to move again. Faster, more aggressive, slicing through the alien formation. The enemy responded with bursts of light and fire, but none broke through. The ship folded reality itself, slipping between attacks, hunting with terrifying precision. The survivors realized with growing horror that they weren't watching a battle. They were inside a hunt, and yet something inside them stirred too. The longer they remained aboard, the more their thoughts seemed to align with the ship's. Fear gave way to instinct, hesitation to hunger. Some resisted, clinging to the memory of what humanity once was. Others surrendered, letting the ship's will flow through them. The lines between human and machine, between choice and control, blurred. Outside, the alien fleets braced, their weapons charging brighter than ever. Inside, the survivors stood on the edge of surrender or defiance. And all around them, Earth trembled as more hidden ships stirred beneath its surface, waiting to rise. The war was no longer just between humans and aliens. It was a war for control of the black ship itself, and for the fate of a planet that had been hiding secrets long before anyone knew they existed. The survivors understood now. The true battle had not even begun. And when it did, the sky would burn with more than alien fire. It would burn with the hunger of the black ship, and with the choice of whether humanity would remain human at all. The black ship rose higher into the burning sky, its engines roaring like a storm contained within metal and shadow. Outside, the alien fleets formed a cage of silver, tightening around the lone vessel, their weapons glowing brighter with every passing second. It was a standstill that could not last. The invaders were waiting for one mistake, one opening, while the ship itself pulsed with restless energy, hungering to strike. Inside, the survivors gripped the rails and seats, their faces pale in the dim glow of the symbols burning across the walls. The truth had already been revealed. The black ship was not humanity's creation, not even its gift. It was a predator, an ancient hunter left on Earth as part of a larger prison. And now it had awakened. The survivors argued until their voices cracked. Some demanded they abandon the ship, even if it meant dying on the ground rather than being consumed by its will. Others said it was too late for fear, that the only chance to save Earth was to use the ship fully no matter what the cost. Their voices rose, clashing in desperation, and the ship responded with vibrations so deep the floor rattled beneath them. The survivors knew it was listening, judging, weighing their choices like prey squirming in a trap. Then the aliens struck. The first volley of energy beams lit the atmosphere, tearing toward the black ship with a force strong enough to level entire cities. But before the survivors could even scream, the ship reacted. It folded the space around itself, bending light, turning the attack back upon the enemy. The beams sliced through their own formation, shredding smaller crafts into fragments of silver and fire. The survivors clung to the walls, stunned at the sheer brutality of it. The black ship wasn't just defending itself, it was making the invaders destroy one another, but the aliens adapted. Massive warships broke from the cage, circling tighter, their weapons shifting frequency, testing the limits of the ship's defenses. For the first time, the black ship shuddered. Sparks rained from the ceiling, lights flickered, and the survivors felt the walls shake like a beast struck by a spear. The alien armada had learned. This would not be an easy hunt. The ship responded by opening itself further. Doors they had never seen before slid open, revealing chambers glowing with strange light. Weapons unfurled from the hull, blades of pure energy stretching across the void. The survivors staggered as the ship's pulse surged stronger, louder, pressing into their skulls like a command. They realized with horror that the black ship was calling them, not just to watch, but to join. Visions flooded their minds. They saw controls they did not understand suddenly become clear. They felt the pull of weapons they had never touched as if they were part of their own bodies. The ship wasn't asking them to pilot. It was pulling them into itself, fusing thought and machine. Some resisted, screaming, clinging to their humanity. Others surrendered, letting the power wash through them. Their fear replaced by hunger that wasn't their own. One survivor, the first to sit in the pilot's chair, cried out as the ship fully connected to them. Their eyes glowed with the same dark light that crawled across the hull. Through them, the black ship moved faster, struck harder, weaving between alien fire with deadly precision. Each enemy craft it touched fell silent, their glowing hulls dimming before vanishing into nothing. The others inside the ship felt the connection too, like invisible threads tying their thoughts together, binding them into a single will. For a moment, it seemed unstoppable. The black ship cut through the alien fleet like a shadow scythe, consuming their strength, feeding on their attacks, growing stronger with every kill. The survivors felt that strength inside them, rushing like fire through their veins. Fear gave way to awe, then to something darker. They began to crave it. But then came the unexpected twist. As the last of the smaller alien ships fell, the viewing screens flickered with a new image. Not the fleet, not Earth, but deep space. There, far beyond the solar system, more signals stirred. Armadas larger than anything they had faced were moving, fleets that stretched across the stars, converging on Earth. The survivors realized with dread that this battle was not the climax of the war. It was only the beginning. The aliens hadn't committed their full force yet because they had been afraid. But now, the black ship's awakening had sent a signal across the galaxy. Reinforcements were coming. drawn not by humanity, but by the predator they had spent ages trying to contain. Inside, the survivors' unity began to crack again. Some shouted that they had doomed Earth, that awakening the Black Ship had called down a war humanity could never survive. Others, drunk on the ship's power, laughed through their fear, declaring that with this weapon they could stand against anything, even fleets stretching across the stars. The Black Ship's hum grew louder, pressing into their thoughts, twisting their arguments until words blurred into instinct. The pilot, now fully bound to the ship, turned toward the others, their voice strange and hollow, as though layered with another. "It doesn't want to save us. It wants to finish the war it started." The others froze, their fear sharpening. For all its power, the Black Ship had no loyalty to Earth. It was not humanity's weapon. It was using humanity as its vessel. The climax unfolded in chaos. The alien warships tightened their assault, beams slicing closer, shaking the ship with each impact. The survivors screamed as the hull trembled, fire licking through the corridors. The ship retaliated with devastating force, unleashing dark pulses that tore through the enemy, but each strike left it hungrier, more desperate. The survivors felt it pulling at them harder, drawing not just their thoughts, but their very essence. It was feeding on them now, too. In a desperate act, one survivor broke from the others and ran to the glowing symbols etched into the walls. Their hands pressed against the burning patterns and visions surged through them. They saw the truth. The Black Ship was not a single weapon but part of a network, a species of machines designed to hunt across the stars. It was never meant to end wars. It was meant to ensure they never ended. And Earth had been chosen not by accident, but because it was a place to bury one of these predators far from its kin. The survivor shouted the truth, begging the others to hear. For a moment, doubt rippled through them, weakening the ship's grip. The Black Ship roared, shaking violently, trying to silence the revelation. The alien fleets pressed harder, seizing the opening, pouring fire into the dark vessel. The pilot's eyes burned brighter, their voice breaking as they fought to stay themselves. "We have to choose," they gasped. "Either we let it consume us and fight their war forever, or we end it here." The words struck like knives. No one wanted to believe the choice was that final, that cruel. But deep down, they all felt the truth. The Black Ship shrieked, its hull alive with energy, preparing to unleash a final devastating strike that could wipe out the enemy armada in a single wave. The survivors clung to the walls, torn between survival and sacrifice. Some cried to let it happen, to embrace the weapon and survive no matter the cost. Others screamed to stop it, to cut the connection before it consumed not just the aliens, but humanity itself. The moment stretched, unbearable. The aliens drew closer, their beams piercing the dark hull, tearing cracks into its surface. The Black Ship's energy built higher, hotter, the floor shaking as though the planet itself would split. The survivors knew the decision had come. And then, in the very last second before the strike, the unexpected twist revealed itself. The ship stopped fighting the aliens. Its weapons folded away. Its hum quieted. Instead, it turned inward. The survivors felt the walls closing, the floor shifting, as though the ship was no longer aiming at the enemy outside, but at them. The Black Ship wasn't going to destroy the armada. It was going to consume its passengers fully, binding them into itself, making them the core of its hunt for eternity. The survivors screamed as the darkness closed, their final choice still unmade. And outside, the alien fleets paused, weapons ready, waiting to see whether humanity's last chance would become its salvation or the next predator unleashed into the stars. The walls closed in with a low groan, the Black Ship trembling like a predator about to swallow its prey whole. The survivors clutched at whatever they could, their bodies shaking as the symbols carved into the metal flared with searing light. For a moment it felt as though everything was lost, that they would be pulled into the ship forever, their thoughts stripped away until nothing remained but the weapon's hunger. The air was thick with panic, but also with the weight of a choice that could not be avoided. The one who had touched the glowing symbols pressed their hands deeper against the walls, fighting against the pull of the ship's will. They shouted for the others to resist, to remember who they were, to hold on to themselves instead of giving in. Their voice cracked, but it carried through the darkness, stirring something inside the rest. The survivors had been broken, scattered, and terrified for so long. But in that moment, as the ship tried to devour them, a spark of defiance returned. They weren't just passengers inside a predator. They were still human. The ship screamed in response, its voice a chorus of metal grinding and power surging. It pressed harder, forcing visions into their minds. Galaxies burning, alien fleets consumed, victory bought with endless destruction. It showed them the promise of survival if they surrendered, if they let it guide them. But it also showed the truth behind the promise. Survival meant becoming part of the Black Ship, forever trapped in its endless war. The survivors linked hands, their grip tight, their breaths ragged. One by one, they focused not on the ship's hunger, but on their memories. Small things. The sound of rain on rooftops, the taste of food shared with family, the laughter of children before the skies had turned red with fire, the warmth of sunlight on their skin. These fragments of humanity clashed with the ship's visions, pushing back against its will. For the first time since it had awakened, the Black Ship faltered. The pilot, still bound deepest to the vessel, screamed as light poured from their eyes. They were torn between the ship's control and their own fragile humanity. The others pulled at them, not with hands but with words, calling their name, reminding them of who they were before the war, before the weapon. Slowly, painfully, the darkness dimmed inside their gaze. The ship shook violently, its energy surging out in waves that shattered the alien formations outside. The enemy fleet staggered, their weapons falling silent as the Black Ship's power collapsed inward instead of outward. The invaders held their fire uncertain, watching as the predator they had feared for so long began to weaken. For the first time, the survivors saw hesitation in the alien armada. They weren't just enemies, they were jailers, watching to see if the prison would hold. With one final cry, the survivors broke the ship's hold. The connection snapped, and the pilot slumped to the floor, their bodies shaking but alive. The walls dimmed, the glowing symbols fading like dying embers. The ship went still. Not destroyed, not dead, but silent. Its hunger was contained, its power dormant once again. The survivors staggered to their feet, breathing hard, tears streaking their faces. They looked at each other and realized what they had done. They hadn't destroyed the aliens, they hadn't unleashed the Black Ship's full fury, but they had chosen. They had chosen to stay human, even when survival seemed impossible. And that choice had silenced the predator. Outside, the alien fleet slowly withdrew. They did not attack, nor did they press closer. Instead, they turned their massive ships and drifted away from Earth's orbit, vanishing into the void one by one. The survivors watched in awe and confusion. The aliens hadn't come to destroy Earth, not fully. They had come to keep the Black Ship contained, and now, seeing that humanity had resisted it, they left the planet in peace. For now. The survivors stood in the quiet of the dormant ship, feeling the stillness echo through their bones. They didn't cheer or celebrate. They simply breathed, overwhelmed by the fragile reality they had been given. Earth was still broken, its cities in ruins, its people scattered and scarred. But for the first time in years, there was no fire in the sky. Days passed as they explored the silent corridors. Without the ship's hum, it felt like a tomb. They debated whether to leave, to seal the Black Ship beneath the ground again, or to keep it as a reminder of what they had faced. In the end, they decided it could not be destroyed, nor could it be ignored. It would remain dormant, hidden once more, not as a weapon to wield, but as a warning of the cost of surrendering to hunger and fear. When they finally stepped back onto Earth's soil, the air was heavy with ash, but also with possibility. They walked among ruins where small groups of survivors began to emerge from hiding, drawn by the silence in the sky. For the first time, people looked up and did not see the glow of alien ships. They saw stars, distant, endless, and unclaimed. Word spread slowly that the invaders were gone, at least for now. Communities began to form again. Fires burned not as signals of destruction, but as warmth and light in the darkness. Food was shared, stories told, children laughed again. It was fragile, uncertain, but it was human. The survivors of the Black Ship did not speak openly about everything they had seen. They knew the truth would be too heavy for most. But they shared the lesson that humanity's greatest weapon was not a machine buried in the earth, but the will to remain themselves in the face of fear. The memory of the Black Ship lingered, whispered about in secret. Some saw it as salvation, others as a curse. But all agreed it was not the answer. It was a shadow, a reminder of how close they had come to losing more than their lives. Years later, when the skies remained quiet, people would look back on the time of the invasion and speak of the turning point not as a victory of fire and force, but as the moment humanity refused to become prey or predator. It was the moment they remembered who they were. Still, the final twist lingered in silence. Deep beneath the earth, the Black Ship rested, dormant but not dead. And far beyond the stars, other fleets moved in shadows, watching. The war was not ended, only paused. But humanity had proven something neither the aliens nor the Black Ship had expected. They could resist. They could endure, and they could choose. That choice, more than any weapon, was their final defense. As the survivors looked once more at the night sky, one whispered what they all felt. "We are still here, and that's enough." The stars above gave no answer, only the cold light of a universe vast and full of shadows. But for the first time, the silence did not feel like fear. It felt like hope.